Welcome to the Equity.Guru Investor Roundtable. Today, discussing solar energy. That's right. I'm Rob. That is Galen down there in the basement having a little party. VV, Vishal up in the far corner, and the guru himself straight upstairs in the penthouse, living large. It is Chris Perry. Solar, kind of a quiet industry, if you will, but you got to love the names. There's Boralex. BLX on the Toronto Exchange, UGE International on the venture as UGE. Imagine that. Solar Alliance. A lot of these sound like comic book names. Solar Alliance, which is SOLR on the venture with CEO Mike Clark. And then Intergex with a G, Innergex Renewable Energy. And that is INE in Toronto. Galen, boy, in this case, it really is 40 or 60,000 or 2 million light years away.
Exactly. Holy crap. Huh? 8 minutes travel time. All right, here we go. As Rob had mentioned, the solar sector is quiet, it's sleepy, because it's infrastructure, and the hype is all sort of blown away since Musk made that horrible acquisition of Solar City to cover him and his brother's ass. Now, the solar industry right now it's sort of focusing on what it actually is, and I don't think it's really just sort of a residential play anymore. It's, as I said, very much infrastructure. And so what a lot of these companies are doing is they're buying properties or assets that are producing energy, selling them to the grid, and then just returning a dividend. You know, these are going to be safe stocks, ones that you can buy in, have contracts with government agencies for 25 years with equipment that lasts 40. So basically, let's start off with UGE. UGE is remains 100% sponsor equity owner. Basically, what used to happen in the solar industry is that you had one company start the proposal, another company go into the building, and another company do the management after the fact. And so it was widely split. Many of these companies now are actually just going to be owner-operators and become independent energy generators for the regions that they supply. UGE is got some pretty good projects going there. I think they have about 2 megawatts that are actually being produced right now in operating assets. They have 3 megawatts in deployment, which is in the latter stages of building and certification and such. But they have about 790 megawatts in its pipeline for deployment. So this has got a huge project backlog. There's a lot of sort of potential in this company. I'm going to move on from them because, well, it's solar energy. We're going to go on to that to Solar Alliance. Solar Alliance operates in the United States, in Tennessee, Kentucky, North and South Carolina, and also are opening their doors to other states within that region. They're providing solar installations for customers. Many of these companies are not selling directly to users per se, but selling to the grid. Much of them doing deals with the energy grid operators, and so you don't get locked into this installation on your house. It just carries forward as sort of a community thing, which is the better prospect rather than just selling to individuals, because that's nothing but a pain in the arse. Solar panels are being touted right now as being incredibly maintenance free, having to clean them, a few times a year to make sure they're okay, but no moving parts. They just sit there and collect energy for free and allow you to decrease your bills, and as these other energy providers can do, sell to their grid providers and create revenue that way. Intergex is another one that has operations now throughout Canada, the United States, France, and Chile. For me, it seems to me that these guys have the most going right now. They've got, as I said, 75 operating assets generating in excess of 3,800 megawatts, and as well as 7 projects in development. This is, for me, one of the stars of the sector for myself, somebody that you can get into and just, generate revenue from and just watch it roll in through the door. The next thing you've got is Boralex. Boralex is still in the process of bidding for energy projects, but they have about 800 megawatts of solar projects in Q3 in 2021. This is huge growth for a company of that sort. Can they execute? That would be the question. But companies like this operate under the radar and just move ahead and quietly make revenue.
Yep.
Opening the floor.
Chris, you can interject or interjects with some thoughts.
I'll interject in a very general sense about all of these companies. I think if you pull each one of them up as a ticker and look at the stock chart, they each look bad in the last year. You've got INE has gone from $31 down to $19. BLX has gone from 55 down to 37. SOLR has gone from 80 down to 20. And then you've got UGE, it's gone from 320 down to as low as $1.20 before it came up again. They all look like gong shows if you're just looking at the sheets in that perspective. But if you look at the 3-year charts on each of these companies, you see one really important thing, and that is each of them around January of this year, November of last year, went on an absolute tear. In terms of UGE, it went from 20 cents up to $3.30. In terms of SOLR, it went from under 5 cents to above 80 cents. On INE, you're looking at, 3 years ago, it was down to $10 and it got up to $30. And on BLX, you're looking at it, there's $17.50 going to 55. So all things being considered, these are actually wins depending on when guys got in and if guys got out. Now, if you just take a straight line from the beginning of 2020 through to now, these things are all on the up, right? They're all increases. They're all companies that are definitely doing a lot better now than they were at the beginning of January 2020. The end of 2020, it's a different story. So clearly we got a little bit interested in solar, probably something to do with Tesla, if I'm guessing, and just a general sort of desire to get into clean energy is always there. And that's why even when these companies came off a little bit, they still maintained enough of that rise for it to have been a win. So you can get into the weeds on each individual company and what they bring. I think probably if I'm looking at just charts, UGE looks the most interesting right now because it seems like it's got a lot of volatility, but it's also got a lot of upward momentum. But in terms of, just looking at the charts themselves, this industry would be claiming that it's a winner, even if people that are giving it a cursory glance might say, oh, solar, yeah, that's in the toilet.
Mm-hmm. Closer look, chart attack, man.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, I believe these pops at the beginning of this year were actually happening because the Biden administration was coming in and, he had his green infrastructure plans and bills and stuff. And a lot of the clean energy stocks, began to jump off because of that and that admin coming in. I do want to highlight one thing. A lot of people say that, solar panels and clean energy and that kind of stuff is going to take some time. But folks like Boralex and Intergex, they're paying dividends, right? They're making money and they're already paying dividends. So these companies are making money. And, I think a bit of a disclaimer, I am a shareholder of Intergex. I got in because there was a company called Altera Group way back in the day. Well, I think it was like, what was it? 2018. It was a $1.1 billion acquisition of Altera Power back in 2018. So moves are already being made back then because clean energy and renewable energy, it was bringing in the cash back then. So Intergex is what I look for. And I think we can break these companies up in two categories here. We can separate Intergex and Boralex as I would call them more, blue chip utility plays. I think a utility stock, and basically what I mean by utility is, something that people are going to use no matter what happens in the economy. So a lot of people look at energy companies or electricity companies, Fortis, BC, natural gas, that's a good one. They always pay dividends. The stock's not moving too much, but really it's for safety, right? When things are going crazy in the world, these utilities will always be making money. People will always have to pay their bills and stuff, and they pay a dividend. It's just for consistent gains. And I think having a utility stock is definitely something that should be a part of your portfolio. That brings me to, a company like Boralex and Innergex Renewable. It combines utility, and I think there's still a bit of growth there because we're probably just in the beginning stages of the whole push to, renewables and solar and all that kind of stuff. So I think in the future, as more countries and more cities adopt that power and it becomes more permanent. And Galen, I'm assuming most of these solar panels are now, and maybe it's a bad thing for me because I'm an Intergex shareholder, but I think most of them can handle baseload power now, depending on where they're placed.
Yes, well, sort of.
Okay.
They're still the intermittent power source. They're
Okay.
fairly regular. I
Yeah.
mean, quite honestly, for the green energy sector, that it needs the complement or the base, I should say, of nuclear power.
Okay.
That'll be the one constant. But
That's- so
solar
that's gonna
and
be-
wind and thermal all provide viable options to fill those gaps. And also, I guess, as battery technology gets better, rather than catching fire in Australia and having to be taken offline, Tesla, it will be able to better regulate how the energy is delivered to the grid.
Right.
So intermittent power sources will be able to, quote unquote, provide a stable source. But right now, not so much. And that's totally okay.
Yeah.
Right? It was never really, there's no way that it can be because all of those sources are intermittent.
Yeah.
We have to find a way to deliver those, particularly so they give a viable solution.
And
The
I think,
technology is getting better.
Yeah.
The conversion rate is getting better in photovoltaic systems.
Yeah.
It's as we can see from the charts, from the 3-year sort of chart as Chris was describing, you get the initial hype of whatever the product was that they were trying to put out the door. And that was just, people going, oh my God, it's solar. Oh, this is so wonderful. And then we realized that there were problems with intermittent transmission. And how do you get it up and who are you going to sell it to? And the technology wasn't as great as it should be. And then we hit the beginning of this year where we did have, I think, a pandemic fueled sort of conversion to alternative energy, which caused another bump. But what we're seeing, as Chris also mentioned, is a gradual uptrend.
Yeah.
Because as I said, the technology is getting better and it will happen. We are going to see this take place.
Yeah. So I think we should mention two things there as well. Like, obviously it depends where you place it. Because I remember reading stories about, California, they totally forgot that it turns night for half the day. And people were running out of power because they tried to just use solar panel for that. So people were using too much power even at nighttime that, solar panels couldn't handle. And then, you look at like a place like Saudi Arabia, right, where they've installed huge, desert land is, you can't basically use that land for agriculture. So they've installed these huge solar panels and, it's sunny most of the day there. So I think there's going to be certain countries because generally you want to place solar panels and your wind turbines where there's a lot of sun and a lot of wind, and that tends to be where your best agricultural land is. So I think there's going to be, some winners and losers depending on the environment that you're going to place this technology. But I'll throw another thing at you, Galen. Mm-hmm. If you don't want to play that, then if you don't want to play like these companies, would you say it's prudent to maybe play copper and silver? Because I'm assuming if you want to increase your baseload power, you're probably going to need more of those commodities in your solar panels or in your wind turbine.
And those elements will bleed over into any other sort of infrastructure push as well, and then electronics, and that's exactly where we're heading anyway. So yeah, you could just say that I don't want to have to play, particularly in solar. If I just throw into silver, that's going to cross all the gamut, and I'll make money regardless. Because honestly, solar is a great solution, but it isn't the only one. There is wind, there's tidal, there's thermal, there's all sorts of stuff that you can use. Geothermal, it's the possibilities are endless. And I think in a collection is where we're going to find our answer, and not through one source.
So Intergex is not just solar. No. They've got some hydro as well, but something happened to Intergex this year that points to the problems of being in this space, and that happened in Texas during the winter storms. Yep. The winds are too hard for the wind farms, the clouds are too deep for the solar, and the company has contracts that it needs to supply a certain amount of gas. It has hedges in place. So, when the cost of electricity rises, they're not necessarily getting the benefit from it. So they took a bit of a hit this year, which makes sense on the share chart. This industry is still so new that we don't really know what it's going to look like in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, right? If we get to a point where, hey, you could slap a solar panel on top of your car or your washing machine or your garden shed, and at a low cost be producing electricity and pulling yourself away from the grid, does that mean that solar farms take a hit? Does that mean that wind creation takes a hit? Long term, we might be getting to a place where we all become power producers. Geothermal, as you said, is an important thing that could really come off. Tidal is something that's always promising too. Uranium is going on a run for all of these reasons. Every one of these potential ways to generate power comes with a potential downside. And so, like you said, like companies that want to hedge not by signing supply contracts necessarily, but by having a nuclear power, by having a hydroelectric system, by having solar and wind and anything else that comes along, hamsters on exercise bikes, like, hedge all your bets, make sure that you're always generating power and always generating currency, and check back often, because, as much as Elon goes out there and drops a tweet that says, hey, I'm buying a solar panel, and suddenly solar goes up 1,000%, he can also say, yeah, I'm not doing solar anymore, I'm doing big batteries, and down it all comes. So, take it with a grain of salt. I think Intergex is interesting because it's well hedged. I think the fact that it lost money makes it a buying opportunity now, because that's a one-off event loss, not necessarily a long-term problem. And the others are all interesting, but put them on your watch list. I don't see them necessarily moving heavy in the next couple of weeks.
So what are we doing with our tangible dollars and cents as we speak right now, either in the sector or with one of the specific companies? Galen?
Okay. Well, as Vishal was saying, I actually find Intergex to be a interesting position, and would probably put a little bit of money against it, and because it would just bring in revenue, basically.
Yep.
And I would try to see, as his point is that as the sector itself fills out, then I would make a determination whether or not I would get in deeper or spread my wealth elsewhere. So I'll start with 15. Why not? What the hell? In we go.
1,500 bones to
Yep.
Intergex.
Yep.
Chris, what are you doing?
I like getting a starting position on Energex, even if just to watch it more closely. I'd say, if we're looking at a big swathe of available dollars, I wouldn't necessarily sink it all in there, because you never know. But I'd say it's likely that by the end of the year, this thing will probably be more interesting than it is now. And it's already taken enough hits through this year that I see like a $19 being a base. It'd have to have some pretty bad news to break beneath it. There's a lot of stuff happening here. As Vishal said, dividends don't hurt. And if any young investors want to know what dividends actually are, Google it. It's a thing that used to happen on the stock market.
Exactly.
Tesla doesn't pay them, just so you know.
Nobody pays them. When you get a dividend check, people are like, "What? Wait, what's this about?"
So you're in for 15?
No, I'd be in for like 3 or 4, just to set a position,
Okay.
and watch it close.
Okay.
Michelle?
Mine's going to be a little bit different here because I think this is the first time we've ever covered a dividend-paying company. So my approach for them are actually a bit different. I like Intergex, and I also, would be a fan of Boralex here because they have, again, I think they're paying the dividends. They have a good diversified source of where they're getting their revenues from in terms of different power sources: wind, solar, hydroelectric, thermal, and we talked about Intergex with the hydroelectricity. My thinking for these plays are going to be you're going to always have a utility in your portfolio. So what I'm thinking is, or what I'm doing, this is what I do personally, but I would say, buy initial stake here. I would put up maybe 5K, in Intergex. And what I would do is every month from now till the day you die, spend a few $100s, $100, whatever per month, to add, to buy shares in this. And in the, down the road, when you have enough shares that pays enough dividends, you'll be putting it in your drip, which means each dividend you get will be put back into purchases of new shares. And that's sort of how you build long-term wealth with, these dividend-paying stocks, and you just look for these companies that pay dividends, that are in a good space. With these utilities, you're not going to see too much crazy movement, like I said, but I think there's a good element of growth with some of these renewable sources.
So sorry, how much are you going to throw in?
Throw in 5K.
5K.
My initial position of 5K in Intergex, and add every month, buy a few shares every month.
Intergex Renewable Energy is INE on the Toronto Exchange. Solar Alliance is SOLR on the venture. Also on the venture is UGE, which is UGE International. And of course, Boralex, BLX on the Toronto Exchange. They are solar companies. These are the thoughts and the expert opinions of the three gentlemen involved. Galen down there, Vishal over there, Chris Perry up there. Please do your own homework. We can't guarantee a damn thing. You have to do your own research. Past performance does not guarantee future results either.
Just before we drop, sorry,
Yes.
I just want to point out to people that the infrastructure spending that the world thought Biden was going to execute in like a day and a half back in the end of December 2020, they just passed that bill.
And it's not going to make it past the Senate. It's going to get bounced back to the House.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a lot closer now than it was back in December of last year, right?
Yeah,
so if you were buying then because you thought infrastructure was going to move, well, it's a lot closer to moving today than it was back then.
There you go.
Catalyst.
Closing. Yes, Vishal?
I was just saying we have a catalyst. That was buy the rumor, sell the news. This is going to be buy the news. The actual catalyst.
Perfect parting shot as we depart this Equity Guru Investor Roundtable.
Man, you guys went deep. I only wet my toes.